Okay, so welcome to lesson 21. It's our first lesson for preparing for on air. And for the next foreseeable future, we'll be focusing on the on air elements, including obviously your production and your imaging, as well as uh, your news and so on, news, sports, business, uh, traffic, etc., etc. And then obviously doing quite a lot of practical in class just to make sure that you become better presenters. We're also going to go to the studio, make sure that you have some good studio sessions like training, so that you know how to operate the playback systems and do dry runs, so that when you get on air, which will be the beginning of the second semester, which is a little sooner than you think, um, it will, yeah, you guys will sound quite fantastic. And let's move directly into it. Okay, so again, the lessons are quite short just because we don't have the interaction back and forth. But I will, so specifically with the on air, I really obviously want to revisit these particular lessons when I see you again in person and when we obviously pass this long holiday, long weekend. But let's just introduce the concepts right now. Okay, so why is it important to design a radio show? The fundamentals. So now I want to just start off by saying to you once again that the fundamentals are genuinely the most important things that you are going to learn throughout your entire radio broadcasting career, because they are the foundation of doing things correctly, right? And if you cannot do anything or the fundamentals correctly, you can't do anything great from then onwards. So radio is something that is very difficult to grasp, okay? But once you do grasp it and you do understand the control of again just structure, the skills, and of course adding that talent and putting it all together, then it starts becoming second nature to you the more and more and more and more that you do it, right? So okay, so let's just make sure that we cover a couple of things right at the beginning so that you understand where your headspace is at. Okay, you cannot meet the demands of your audience without a clear plan. So when we are planning radio shows and we are, you're going on air day to day. Whether we want to look at this from a, like a station perspective, but I want to kind of focus on your show itself. You don't, you can't, you will not have a good radio show. And when I say that, like good, it's not going to be like good is measured by the importance and relevance of what it has meant to your listener that particular day that you decided to go on air and have a chat to them and share information and whatever it is, whether it be a design of shows that include promos and competitions or interviews and let's say charts or whatever it may be. It doesn't really matter. There's so many different elements that make up your radio clocks. But was it something that your listener wanted to hear? And that is based on understanding your audience, as we have already covered, within our theory lessons before, and you're doing your formative as well, but also constantly understanding them and being in touch, like where with that audience on a genuinely consistent level, like constant and consistent level. Okay, so making sure that when you are kind of planning your show, that you are looking at it from your audience's point of view, looking up and sourcing information and news, whatever it may be, and anecdotes. That is something that again forms part of their lifestyle. And then going from there onwards. Yeah, what is a radio show designed to do? It is there to inform, entertain, and to educate. That is the entirety of what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to mean something to the person that has decided to tune in and leave you tuned in, to their time and their space. And we're being invited into a stranger's home in a way, um, and being allowed to stay, not being kicked off by switching off the show. And as I've said and explained before, that's because just of the free nature where you don't have to pay for the service. Like people are a lot more, we are as a consumer a lot more we are a lot more fussy as to how it is that we decide to give our free time to a free service, and a lot more nitpicky about what it is because we're not obligated by like money that we have spent to at least give it a chance, whatever it is, right? So the radio show is designed to connect at the end of the day, connect and communicate directly to the listener. It is designed to satisfy the needs and wants of your target audience. How is a radio show just like any other commercial product? Well, it's intended to meet a need and satisfy a market, right? So we claim a lot of obviously unique characteristics to what the radio broadcasting, the broadcasting industry and craft has on its own. But at the end of the day, it is just another service, and for a service to work, to make money, for it to be popular, like it's got to please its client and be a need for that client, right? So again, just think of yourself in any aspect. I mean, you are a listener yourself. You have been for your entire life. Like there's no one that really says that they haven't listened to radio once at all, through the the duration of their lifespan. So you would know what it sounds like on the other side. And to be a better presenter, you've got to be constantly also a better listener, to a station or two stations, to better understand what it is that you are constructing as a commercial product, something that you can sell, right? All right, planning any show is mandatory. In other words, that it has to be done. You have no like there isn't like a conversation around it. Oh, you're gonna wing it. Oh, so you're good enough. You got the talent. You got the raw talent. That doesn't matter at all. A raw talent is great, but it is 100% of absolutely no use to you if you don't understand the structure in which like you are using those talents to the fullest capacity. So we can look at a sports star that someone has that raw talent for football, soccer, and they like unless they understand how the there are strategies and there are plays and they're different, whatever it may be in terms of training and whatever uh, professional soccer players will go through to be able to prepare for different matches and so on and so forth, right? Like what use are you? You understand? You have to build and polish and sculpt that talent into something that can reap a reward on output that is beneficial, and in that case, winning the game, So, okay, so all right. So show prep is part of your job, and it ensures direction, cause, and direction for the listener and any particular day, on any particular day at that time of the day. And that's really important to understand because really think about like how different your needs are on a Monday morning to your needs on a Wednesday afternoon, to your needs on a Friday night, to your needs on a Sunday mid morning. You understand? And the thing is, again, depending on also which station you are listening to and what it is that you are inclined to want to have as part of your lifestyle. So it is about not understanding a template at all. And when I say a template, like one show does not match every single show that you do. And what works on one day will definitely not be a like again like a recipe for what works on another day. But the construct of that is super important to be able to master the skill of radio broadcasting. A radio show is designed to reflect the socioeconomic lifestyle and interests of your listener. If you don't give a listener what they want, they're going to find it elsewhere again. So just picture yourself going to like a Spar or a Checkers, whatever it is, and you're looking specifically for a certain toothpaste or a certain toothbrush. If you don't find it, you're going to just walk and try and find it somewhere else because you really want it. You understand? Like you heard it's best, and you're like someone that enjoys having like great teeth or whatever it is. Whatever it may be, you will go out and you will find it. When we are on a shopping like a we got a mission, man. We got a mission. we'll go out and we'll find exactly what we want. And if we don't find it, or we'll find someone of dealing with it, we won't go for a second best unless completely, absolutely necessary, which radio actually isn't. No medium actually is, as I've said before. Um, it isn't absolutely necessary for someone to actually breathe and live in everyday life. In South Africa, our market is saturated, which means that if we lose listeners, they are more likely to find their way to another radio station. Again, as we said, the 31 commercial radio stations, 31 to 33, I think it's 31, right? And that is 31 across regions, right? So most of them are regional radio stations, which means we have even less choice within our own region to be able to find it tune for free instead of using it as a streaming service and then trying to, like, let's say, tune into here in Gauteng, like Algo FM or whatever it is, which we probably will not do because of the fact that Algo FM is for our Port Elizabeth or Quibera, right? Quibera audience. All right, so it's going to kind of like little to no interest or relevance to our everyday lives as scouting is. Okay, the fundamentals, the idea of segmentation, so dividing a program up into easily digestible parts, has long been popular and effective in radio broadcasting. All right, so that's the whole point of planning, is be able to look at a clock that we've discussed and that from second year as well. I have included it somewhere, but I would rather cover it in class so that we can actually draw the clocks up together, and so I can see whether or not you on like in the right space for that. Okay, and not rely on, let's say, your second or first year knowledge of it. But we structure our programs to have good balance and then a synergy throughout what it is that we feel is important for that particular quarterly hour. And that could be even down to the use of an admin link is appropriate, and at a certain point, or is it an interview, or is it going to the news, or is it? Okay, so Andrew Kreisel, right? Said that it is ideal for broadcasters and advertisers because homogeneous uh, uh, homogene come on, man, Chris, because it homogenizes the output, making the commercial breaks and informational elements seem all of a piece of together a whole that is greater than some of its parts with the music, right? So let's continue on here. So what I've done is, and you can go and just have a look at this. It's really quite cool in being able to just introduce yourself to the hot clock, which is your rotational clock, your show clock. It's got many different names. It is just exactly the same thing, where you are planning your shows and you're planning the hours for each hour of your show. You will have to do this for, I think, the first assignment, and you will have to do this before you go on air, to prepare yourself further for this. Just give me a second. Okay, so I'm just blowing my nose back and forth, becoming on and off this recording here and there. He's going to have a look at that. But again, ideally, what we are going to do is do it in class so that you have your Q&A directly and manage to go through the process and understand the construct of a clock like thoroughly and to the highest form of perfection, right? Okay, and accuracy. Okay, the advantage of the clocks. Why do we use clocks? And you will constantly, every time you move to a new show, uh, you will go, or let's say you're restructuring or revitalizing or rebranding, I don't know, whatever it is, a show, you will then redo the clocks for it, as well as if there's a top-down effect. Again, if it's a station that's deciding to kind of also restructure the way that they are, maybe playing more music, or playing less music, or adding new different shows to, or aspects of different shows to, different times of day. Like you'll revisit the clock and you will say, okay, great, is this working? Is this balanced? Is it in terms of our music rotation? Is it correct? The way that we use time management, so on and so forth, is that what we want? For the listeners, they know where to find items and they want to hear. So let's say clocks that are very so if they like volatile, in other words, they're irrational. When I say they're irrational, like they're unpredictable, like we don't really want that. Like when we have our benchmark features, when I say a benchmark feature, you could even consider the news and the traffic and the weather, whatever it is. At certain times, a lot of stations have attempted this and it's failed miserably because there is no point to it. So they moved their news to, let's say, even 5 past or 10 past. Some people so I this was something that Tux tried last year, and it was a horrible decision that they made. They would do their news at 1:45 because they believed that students felt they were free at that point. It was ridiculous, and it was purely ridiculous because the thing is, again, like we live in a world that is at the top and at the bottom of the hour. We have news, and we expect that like on television broadcasting in general, so there are benchmarks, and also people will be like, why is the news late? Like, what, that makes no sense. Why is it early? And then so when you're listening to, like, Metro FM does this often, and they're poor, very poor, and also YFM as well, and they've got very poor control of their time management, and that is primarily the DJ's fault because they do not know either when to keep quiet, they speak too long, and the link carries on too long, and they don't measure backwards how long the spot break is before, let's say, news or whatever it may be, or they cut a song off, or they do whatever it is that just mismanages the time, and then the newsreader has to just kind of like adapt to that. I mean, like, oh, it's 2 past 7, and here is your news. No, it must be 7 o'clock, man. Like, this is your job. Time management is super important. Again, purely also because the most important thing, genuinely, is one, those benchmark items, but also advertising that has to go at a specific time because it costs there are drastic cost changes for every quarterly that advertising is present, that we decide to schedule advertising. Yeah, and again, it's all about time management, and you will learn this as you make the mistakes and build that more that show that sounds slick and structured and controlled, and you're not jabbering and waffling on or whatever it may be in your own links, but it's this great sounding product that has control, structure, and again, just that fluidity that counts in all the right places. Okay, so it helps build loyalty in the way that people get used to, like when something is happening, they feel comfortable, they feel connected, they feel like they have ownership in the product as well because of that connection, like that is established. I'm familiar with it, so I'm there on a staff. It allows for effective time management, which is, again, the most crucial thing that you actually need in radio. Makes sure that items are not forgotten. You have to explain yourself very, very carefully when you're on commercial as to why it is that you decided to drop items that were paid for example. Um, and if it was because you jabbered on again too much, well, you're in a lot of trouble because this is a ripple effect that goes from you to the sales department to the music department, whatever it may be, right? And people are getting upset when they can do your job, they can do their job, and you can't do yours. From programming, it also allows effective rotation of the playlist, allows for effective management of the presenters and the content. So and when we talk about the clock, we talk about the quarterlies, and the quarterlies are represented again in our RAMs, and that's how we look at it from, let's say, from 00 to 15 minutes that move to 30 minutes to the 15 to 30, 30 to 45, 45 back to the top of the hour. Okay. So again, we start the quarterlies and we might move into sub quarterlies, right? So we can do that. This is not again the structure, the final structure for a clock, right? There are many different versions of clocks, again, depending on which station, which show, which time of day, what format, what it is, like what type of show, whatever it may be. So here we have playback systems. So this is RCS in particular. RCS and the music manager plus the program manager will decide on the dynamics of a specific clocks in certain shows, and then they will obviously say, okay, cool, like would like let's say some adult contemporary, or would like what am I saying, man? Like let's say top 40s or classics or this and that to be rotated, and then what the playback system will do is that it will chunk out what has been updated on a daily, in certain situations. We'll then do a proper rotation of, let's say, adverts and jingles and songs, etc., to then spit that out to what the DJ must stick to and must sign off in their shows. Okay. What we will do in class, what has to be in there, obviously news, sport, weather, traffic, if it is a show that includes that, music, the actual DJ links, so the content links, competitions and live reads that are scheduled at certain times because they are paid for, any features that are concurrent or recurrent, should I say, with certain days and certain times of days, whatever it is in certain shows, whether it is comedy skits, parodies, phoners, whatever it may be, right? Okay. So let's go look at just a little bit of detail as to, okay, so news, sport, weather, and traffic. So we know obviously top and the bottom of the hour, we want to be able to have at the top of the hour our news, our full news bulletins, right? Okay. We'd like to have our sports headlines, the weather and the traffic will come into that, including our business indicators, our financial indicators, which will again feature once again at the bottom of the hour, but this time we'll have news headlines, full sports bulletins, we'll have the traffic, the financial indicators, and the weather updates. Again, on stations like, for example, Jacaranda, you'll have the highest, as they proclaim and claim, the highest rotation of, let's say, traffic updates, whatever it is. So you'll have them every 20 minutes, I think it is, 20 or 10 minutes. There'll be traffic updates. On the breakfast shows. And again, I mean, the thing is, again, most commercial stations' breakfasts are pretty much similar to that, and in the way that they will have that, because it's also, I mean, it's something that we just expect from radio. Again, we've had the discussion about that you can go to your GPS, you can go to quite complex and intricate apps that can take you through the traffic. We do put that as it is, but we do expect it to be on shows as well, without any one of these these service elements in a way. Right, we're going to be like, well, what's going on? That makes no sense. Like a breakfast show that doesn't tell you how, or like how to get through like the N1 congestion, makes no sense at all. Okay, anyway, the music is with your music department, your program manager are in charge of being able to rotate that, so that the rotation allows for longer time spent listening, right? Want to keep the listener there for longer, and the music is supposed to be the glue that sticks that together. It's actually not your links. Your links are actually the least important things in the show, just because they can be dropped or changed, and we'll do that in a future lesson. I think it's the next lesson. But the thing is that music is also kind of like it's non-debatable unless it's an emergency. We normally also play this a lot more music for the hour, just instead of less, because we don't want the DJ picking their own music and messing up the rotation. The rotation is there specifically to keep the listener listening longer. DJ links, so we recognize the songs, we can tease to what's coming up next. There are standalone links like commentary pieces, listener participation, so obviously interactive, like one obviously have our interactive call outs, whatever it may be, whether it is just a call out where we're having a discussion about something, maybe perhaps as a back end of an interview or whatever it may be, or it is, let's say, through competitions and so on. And any other spoken content form that comes from the DJ, him or herself. These are not usually included in the clocks unless it is specifically featured as a feature. I disagree with that, and we will put them in because they take up time, so you have to do time management. So we will be putting that in. For example, so a clock should not have, okay, song back announcement for sure. I mean, you're not going when we do the clocks. The links in specific are going to be generic because the thing is that your links, your content links must actually change on a daily. So you want to have like a rough idea as to where you're going to have the links and where you might have admin links and so on and so forth, right? So in that sense, yeah, into that detail, it's a no, but we are going to include them in the clocks. They do take up a space, they do take up time. Okay. Competitions and live reads. So so it's something that within the clock, it's very particular. You won't have that every day. And so the thing is that that will be scheduled in for you. So you will readjust your prep and your clock. And the clock will remain quite standard. The prep will be based on and dynamically, obviously, produced daily, as you for the day of the show. That will then obviously then include, we have to do like a competition. Yeah, we might have to include a live read during this spot break or before this particular feature or whatever it may be. Features are constant, so you want to be able to include that within your clocks as well. And again, that's just a recap of what we have just said there. Nearly done. More advantages of the clock. So how many features and where they are placed, where your music is scheduled, how much music is scheduled. So obviously during the day we're gonna have a lot more music than in the morning or on the drive shows, just because of the amount of, let's say, advertising and let's say competitions, promos, and features, whatever that are within those two shows specifically as flagships. So we'll play a lot more music there in the lunch and the brunch and the weekends and so on and so forth. Right, if there are too many or too few speech blocks, and if there are too many or too few music sweeps, you can balance that out. How effective 60 minutes will be as a total fluid whole, right? So we always want to say, okay, at any one moment, so not particularly at the 0, the 15, the 30, or the 45, at any one particular moment throughout the clock, how are we keeping the listener listening longer and not actually giving them a reason to tune out? Okay, so why have 4 commercial breaks an hour? Why not just play all of them at the same time? Well, one, it's going to be far too long. Two, also like different quarters of an hour have different types and like numbers of intensity of listeners. So one will be more lucrative to a certain client, feeling that more listeners are tuned in at this time. Again, and we want to be able to, like, obviously we have to bring that into how we're going to charge them, and definitely not. I mean, that's to play them all at once is just silly. I mean, that's just silly. It's going to be like 20 minutes or whatever, 15 minutes or even 10 minutes of ads. Like, that will be absolutely ineffective. Like, we could also have a clash of competitors in there, which we really actually do not want. We'll balance that out as well. Make sure that we are doing that so that we don't have as much as we can possibly can, like clashes in interest, etc., etc. Okay. How many clocks is enough? So for Boston, you'll have 2-hour shows, but pretty much the average is 3-hour shows. Some are 4-hour shows, like you see on YFM Breakfast, and I think still on Metro. I'm not too sure. I think they are still. I think they're at 3 now. But yeah, the 3-hour is the average mark, and it's a good number. 4-hour shows are quite exhausting. This is the clock that I will go through with you in class that I've drawn up, that I draw up specifically for the 30 years. Okay, where you will see, I'm just going to slightly just click here, take that off, and see a little bit of so we have to do it to the minute and to the second, depending on how long we decide. So the average for songs are 3.5 minutes, right? The jingles will be 30 seconds, right? We'll decide on links, and then we'll obviously decide on music rotation as it goes and as we move along, all right? But this is not something I want to explain here. I want to explain this in class. Okay. Okay, so here's what we'll be doing in class again. We'll be looking at your understanding of YFM 5M947 clocks, right? So I want you to be able to go and listen to these shows, the stations, be able to take a piece of paper and your, like I say, your workbooks, your own, like I say, your subject workbooks that you've got for yourself, and then go and actually write every, like for every minute and second that you hear something change, you must actually list like what is going on. So like for example, at 7:15 in the morning, 10 like and 10 seconds past that 15-minute mark, like there was the beginning of a link, and then that link carried on for, let's say, whatever it was, 2 minutes and 45 seconds. You'll add obviously that. You'll see, just to keep track of it with your watch. That's 1 hour of each show at each station to take note of the clocks, as I just said. Then what crit would you recommend for each and any of those shows? I'm going to end it at that, and I will see you